Okay, I'm gonna call it there. So first bit of housekeeping stuff is please note that the webinar is being recorded both on chat and all and things, and it will go up on YouTube. Also, please put any questions you have in the Q&A window, and I'll get around to them at the end. If there's anything technical related that you think is on my end, please put it in the chat because it's a more immediate way I can view it. So yeah, I'm Thomas Deacon, a design researcher in Mark Plumley's EPSRC fellowship project called AI for Sound. I'd like to say thanks to the UCAN team for the invitation to do this and for setting everything up. And yeah, the research I'll discuss today focuses on the applications of machine listening for soundscapes and well-being. The talk covers various design research case studies, such as co-design workshops, technology-assisted deep listening, and the ethics of AI-enabled sound technology, and a little bit on personalized soundscape design. So new AI technologies offer promising opportunities to improve the monitoring and control of environmental sound, which has a significant impact within the UK economy. Specifically, I refer to AI technology of machine listening that can automatically categorize everyday sounds. This is already a multi-billion pound industry. And within it, we're exploring the subset of how deep learning technologies can automatically categorize these sounds from audio signals, mirroring aspects of human auditory experience. So the project targets how tech can help in areas like sound monitoring of human activity for assisted living in the home, measuring sounds in the domestic environment for things like smart buildings, like offices, measuring sounds in smart cities to improve the urban environment, and developing tools for the creative industries that can understand and generate audio content. So at the moment, I think the work in AIFRS can be broken down to a few key areas, all overseen by Mark Plumley. And so that's sort of fundamental machine learning for sound sensing and neural network design. This has been done by PhD students, James and Hauhe, and the machine learning research fellow, Arshdeep Singh. The applied AI sound sensing stream, where our research engineer, Gabriel, works with Arshdeep to deploy research technologies on low-powered devices so we can do stuff in the wild. Then we've got generative AI for creative industries, where Hauhe is working on a range of technologies for searching vast audio libraries and using text to audio generation as well, using latent diffusion models. And then we got the design research and user engagement in audio AI section. So first on the project was Emily. She started right back at the start of the project, and I only came in January 2023. And I picked up what she was doing and kind of carry on the key ideas. So she's moved on to doing a fellowship in the People-Centered AI Institute in University of Surrey, and she's looking into the broader spectrum of designing all of AI for home well-being and well-being in general. Note she's giving a UCAN talk, I think, in a few months, so keep an eye out for that. And that's all of us. So before I dive into the details on those things, I'd like to bring us back to some of the questions I put in the abstract, which is how will we use and live with machines that can hear like us? One way I like to think about an innovation project like this is to ask, what world does this make in the future, and whose future are we making? So we can see with the boom of AI that there are many competing visions of the future. It's claimed that by some, AI is going to become this omni-use technology that will come to touch all sectors and parts of our society. In previous innovations cycles, like computers and mobile phones, things have got faster, smaller, and cheaper. And this leads to ubiquity and new forms of systems where technology mediate aspects of our lives. So with those ideas in mind, let's take a moment to imagine 10 years into the future. Just take that time. Our homes are a sea of intelligent devices, but rather than one singular superintelligence like a Jarvis or a HAL 9000, it's many mundane, smaller devices, each connected to LLMs and other forms of AI cloud services. These systems understand our spatial context, your patterns of behavior, but they only operate with limited capacities to augment your life. For instance, Your clock knows that you like haikus and displays the current time and weather in the form of an elegant, pithy poem to you in the morning. Your fridge has similar whimsical behaviors where it tries to persuade you to eat some cucumber before it goes off. Now, at work, you have a personalized environmental comfort system, and that uses your smartwatch and your current activity to auto-generate soundscapes that improve your focus. As you work, your pendant AI assistant informs you that it can't hear properly, which might impact its ability to help. So you have to dislodge it from between your blazer and shirt where it got stuck. So how will all these intelligent things work practically? How will all that technology be developed, managed, maintained, secured, networked, shared, and made equitable for us? And how will it feel to live there? And do we want that future? So holding on to that vision and maybe do in your own, and teaming with all those questions and possible ways, I think that design research can serve as a compass in decoding and illuminating those unexplored contours of AI in our lives yet to be. So now, using case studies from the AI for Sound project, the talk is going to look at how we can make AI centered around people's needs to build good versions of these things. So first, I'll introduce some of the key terms in deep learning we're working with. I'll unpack the well-being aspect of our research and how it connects to soundscapes. I'll then look at the challenge of doing this when we're trying to take on those interactions. And in that, with all that stuff in place, I think I'll give a bit more of a review of what design research methodology is. After that, I'll do specific case studies. I'll jam together Emily's work on world cafes into a single case study. I'll look at some of our sound at work case studies, sorry. And then I'll do a bit at the end on some sound at home strand where we're looking at soundscapes and well-being for older adults. That work is unfinished, but I'll get to that later. Yeah, and then at the end, I'll just present some conclusions. So we're using in AI4S deep learning based machine listening, and this is computational analysis of soundscapes, which involves sort of class of technology known as sound event detection, which is SED, and acoustic scene classification, ASC. So the event detection is an approach to identify what is happening in an audio signal and when it is happening, while the acoustic scene classification is a process of labeling recorded audio with a specific environment, like a park or large room. These allow a machine to sense sound in a way that is meant to mirror aspects of human auditory experience, where we perceive spatial information, sources, objects, not just signals and mathematical features. This contextual understanding of sound from these two machines produces human readable outputs, like in event and scene classifications. When we link this to other supporting systems and developments AI, this can provide a basis to explore applications in our daily lives. Suggested sort of areas where this is already making a difference is in security, where we can have glass breaking alarms and gunshot alarms. Not always well implemented. In the assisted living area, we can monitor human activity for providing support for differently abled or the elderly, or just do things like notifying if a baby's crying in a less aggressive way. And in healthcare, we can analyze medical sounds like heartbeats and lung sounds to make remote monitoring and telemedicine more effective. Environmental monitoring, we can look at bird and insect and environmental sounds for rich ecological data. And then I don't know much about traffic management myself, so I'm going to skip that. And in multimedia analysis, we can look at how to have search functionalities and generative functionalities for new types of media content based on this sort of these neural networks understanding the structure of sound. Or structure may be the wrong word. So what we're doing is to expand on those previous areas, is we're looking to uncover how these patterns that could be found in the sound through labeling technologies could match up to human emotions, cognition, and well-being. This could inform development of interventions for more pleasant auditory environments. We're hoping to do things like soundscape design work coupled with generative AI. For instance, you could take a system that can generate sounds based on text, and that could provide a way to provide individualized sounds that you'd like to hear. Combining this, you could start looking at how that could then be channeled into relaxation and stress management. The tools like AI sound searching provide the mean that anyone could find sounds from anything they've had recorded in their life. Say they'd stored something on social media 10 years ago. You could still find that if you could adequately describe it and pull it from there. And that's quite a crazy way of interacting with our own memory there. On the technical side, we're exploring the sustainability of these large models and developing approaches to make them more efficient by pruning them. That's in the technical side, not in the design research side. With the optimized models, we can start looking at the in the wild deployments and seeing how good they are, and where we need to do more work. But as suggested, there's always a catch. Do we want all these things we're suggesting? And what are the sort of implications for privacy and control when we start putting microphones and AI everywhere? That's what the design research team using can try and shed light on. We can use participatory research to help drive technical work that makes sure that the values of the technologies match up with what people want. And also, we can engage in co-creation and genuinely making things tailored to people's needs. So is a UCAN meeting, so I'm not maybe going to spend as long on all the soundscape stuff as you'd imagine. But we aim to use the soundscape approach, which is emphasizing the overall auditory experience of how sound interacts with places and people to create our lived experience. And as many people in here probably understand, soundscapes are important for human health, where excessive noise can cause stress, sleep problems, and cardiovascular issues. But we also need to do more to understand the positive impact of better soundscapes, like how being in nature or even viewing digital nature experiences can make us feel more restored. Related to this, we need understanding of audio visual interactions in our perception of soundscape. For instance, it's said that a good view is worth about 10 decibels of noise. Where else? I think, what the soundscape approach gives us is that we often think of sound as intrinsic to a place, but with AI, it could change that. We could craft new spaces in our own environments and shared environments without going anywhere. And that, to achieve things like that, we need to know which part of soundscapes we want to change and understand why that we're improving those and what sort of results we're going to get. But one thing I want to, before going further, I want to bring up my lazy use of the word well-being thus far. So well-being is what computer scientist Marvin Minsky would have called a suitcase word. It's a suitcase because it contains multiple meanings and we need to unpack it to get anything useful out of it. And other fun suitcase words are creativity, intelligence, memory. So looking at the difference between objective and subjective well-being, the objective stuff is measured in things like our income and our physical health. And these are external things that we can cross-verify in a lot of ways. And these are the sorts of things economists love. On the other hand, subjective well-being is our own assessment of our lives, looking at things like life satisfaction, presence of positive mood, absence of negative emotion. These are internal to us and they're related to how we feel in different times of our life. And subjective well-being is highly personalized and it changes our outlook. In many ways, the clearest opportunities of a lot of machine listening are in satisfying objective well-being, like acoustic health applications and security monitoring, which give clear links between sounds and harms. But in the area of well-being and our psychological needs, presents, I think, a much more complex set of requirements for design. And in AI4S, we want to deeply understand indoor soundscapes. And this exploration can offer insights into our daily experiences and potentially help us address higher order emotional needs, improving things like social interactions and memory support for people with dementia journeys. But on the idea of higher order needs, I wanted to just dispel some common stuff. So often the people use Maslow's hierarchy in this context to sort of, which is a good relationship for objective and subjective well-being. But framing it as a hierarchy would suggest that higher order needs build on top of others. We need nutrition and shelter to have dignity and morality. That sounds a bit weird to me. So while a well-known framework, these issues it's not supported by a lot of empirical evidence. It's based on a sort of Western ethnocentricity. It oversimplifies human needs. It assumes that needs are universal, and it assumes needs to be addressed in a fixed order. So I'm not a fan of that. So I've gone for Desmet and Fokinga's synthesis of needs, which captures more aspects of the self that we can design for, and they don't have to be built on top of each other. It overcomes the issue of a hierarchy, and it transcends cultural boundaries. It needs aren't derived from other needs. One thing, the impact on well-being and pathology is particularly useful because the fulfillment of need leads to physical and mental well-being, but unfulfillment leads to pathologies, medical or psychological. Motivation for behavior is the need for a wide range of situations, not only specific circumstances. So you can have more things that implicate a specific need. And then there's effect on our behaviors. This typology can give us more ways to start looking at behaviors, to design for them and understand what we need to monitor and create systems to look at. So yeah, I really appreciate this framework, especially in that if we push any need too far, it can also create negative outcomes. So if we push a beauty need too far, it just becomes overgroomed extravagance. And yeah, a lot of these things have inverse sort of bivalent relationships. And I think that's a really useful thing to understand. So the synthesis of all this, what challenges we face in doing all this stuff, is looking at non-objective aspects. We must assess the capabilities of current approaches and pinpoint areas requiring additional technical and human-centric efforts. What I'm showing in this messy diagram is the design space complexity for audio AI and well-being. We have to squeeze all this stuff into this technology called AI. And I think that resolves to two areas, which are data and representation challenges to offer useful services and user understanding and acceptance. That's the things, at least I can, as a design researcher, can start helping with. So, the machine learning technologies are also, while promising, present unique challenges for computational sound analysis. A lot of the use cases we're using don't match up to sort of real needs, and they're a bit unrealistic. Also, a lot of the results are sort of fairly enigmatic coming from machine learning, and they require a colossal amount of data and to produce useful results in a lot of cases. And yeah, they label soundscapes in quite simple categorical ways, which might not match up to the way we experiencing things and how we can use that and understand it better. So also we have to deal with lots of data sets with unreliable or missing labels. Yeah, and I think this comes down to the difference that while it emulates aspects of human hearing, it isn't the way our human cognition works. We perceive concepts and relationships, not just acoustic frames of semantic labels. And so there's a chance we might be solving the wrong problems in certain cases and trying to use the wrong things. If we're only focusing on data sets that label events and objects in soundscapes, we don't provide a comprehensive understanding of our individual relationships to sound or general, like group-wide ones. This replication and representation of sound as language mirrors a specific, rather normative mode of listening, which is akin to listening as a sort of disembodied acoustic listing of objects. So we just separating everything out. This gap hampers our ability to connect sound taxonomies to context for well-being interventions, since we lack insights into people's contextual preferences. Another challenge we face is matching up our complex human behavior in a way that a future AI service could use as well. So we have to be able to read in things and know what part of the data is useful. To tackle these challenges, we need sort of fundamental research in what people need, I think, and that's what the design research team can help with. So we tackle it through participatory design and use of creative methods, which could classify under human-centric AI. We seek to understand, develop, and improve approaches that enable individuals to interact with and influence AI systems, fostering greater control and collaboration. This includes making new sound sensing systems, interaction techniques, probing the implications of AI, and fostering communities to shape AI systems according to values and needs. Borrowing some principles again from the fundamental needs, I'd say this is possibility driven. It refers to the capacity or potential for new opportunities or advantages through AI. It's about seeking innovative solutions rather than being bound by existing limitations or constraints. Active user involvement means end users are in the process of development, decision-making, and planning. Like in product and service design, this involvement makes final outcomes meet people's actual needs and preferences. This is a form of like value-sensitive design for AI. And then long-term impact is about lasting effects and outcomes from actions and technology design. Long-term impact is evaluating things that will lead to sustainable positive effects over time rather than sort of short-term solutions. These principles can guide a human-centric approach, and this means we're not just doing interaction design or plain old user research. We're not just optimizing the technology to make it sell, as it were. We want real benefits in people's lives, and we hope some form of AI technology can help without being too creepy or melting the planet in the process. So, but before my on the case studies now, and I'm going to have to speed up, I think. Before my arrival at AI for Sound, Emily was driving the design research, and she did a series of participatory engagements, which I'm grouping into a single session here. So world cafes are a sort of change-oriented method used in academia and governments to bring together people and look at knowledge sharing and generating of new ideas. It's kind of got an open democracy principle that means that it's about making sure people feel comfortable and we can really give people the space to contribute their ideas, and we listen and make sure that the structure of those spaces are conducive. For the ones in AFRS, they were done in small groups where there was these rounds of questions, which I'll introduce in just a second. And then we sort of harvest the data at the end to synthesize it a little bit, but making sure people agree what the synthesis is. In physical world, we'd move between tables often to make sure you're sharing ideas, preventing fixation and creating a bit of dynamism. In online ones, you can still do that, but it doesn't have the same benefits. But also you have to think about the length of the sessions to make sure you avoid a bit of fatigue. So the first cafe looked at soundscapes in the home, and the prompts used in this discussion were: describe the sounds you heard in your locality, describe your ideal soundscape in this place, think of an imaginary technology that allows you to create your ideal listening experience in this place. We can see from these sorts of prompts, a sort of familiar context is brought out, something you know, and then asks you to envisage some new possibilities. It's bring people in, establish a space, get some things, and go from there. So on the home soundscape findings, the sounds in locality match up to a lot of existing soundscape research, with natural sounds positive, context making a difference to mechanical and human sounds. The ideal soundscapes were your a sort of standard nature good, other stuff bad sort of meant thing. But what was interesting was that the ideal was something that shifted the balance of sounds so you could focus on aspects you wanted to give attention to, in this case nature sounds, like a way of focusing in on what was there rather than some fantastical alternative. I think that's quite useful to keep in mind. And on the AI sensing systems highlighted a sort of nice disambiguation between private and public innovations. A private idea is a personalized technology to control the sounds you want, all that stuff. And this I find interesting because if it's in the home, it's how are we activating these cocoons? Where are they? And like, how do we know when someone's in one? That kind of stuff. On the public idea, it's about kind of decorating sound classifications to give more understanding of what's annoying in a residential or public context. I see this as quite similar to sort of data-driven citizen science. If some people at Glasgow work on that, Glasgow Uni. Next, World Cafe looked at soundscapes in work, both home and office, and very similar questions to the one before, like describe your ideal sounds at work, describe what you'd like, and give us a technology that could do that for us. So I'll not take too much time on that. But the findings present a bit more of a complex picture, actually, about sounds in context. Usually natural sounds are considered sort of biophilic and have these perceived benefits, but the participants highlighted that their preference for reflective work were quite different. By the way, reflective work is a sort of classification of knowledge worker tasks where it requires deep thought, concentration, intellectual engagement, things like problem solving and creative thinking. So just in case that's needed. Yeah, the ideal soundscapes for the workplace match up with, I'd say, a lot of literature. So the existing things can be brought to bear to start doing soundscape design there. The AI things focus mostly on creating personalized listening experience, which we iterate in the next study. And I'll talk more about that there. So I think from these participatory practices with groups of people, you can quickly gather kind of valuable contributions and conceive of actually quite appropriate technologies, which people might feel like they could live with. And design requirements can get quite specific, and you can get quite a high diversity of ideas there. And that's from just 2 hours in each example, you know. And so carry this on, you do it more continually, and you'll continue to refine it. So yeah. Now, sound at work. Remember I mentioned that future world where things were highly efficient and affordable? Well, this has quite important ethical implications. If there's advanced monitoring systems everywhere, how do we navigate that in our home or in an office? So to carry forward some of our ideas, we conducted focus groups on some thought experiments involving utopias and dystopias around our concepts. And yeah, we looked at technologies for soundscape generation, sound map visualizations adapted for end users, and some personalized audio zones through speaker technologies. So those sketches are from Emily's Audio World Cafe stuff. We had a bunch of solutions that people felt were good around productivity and well-being. We built on these based on sort of state-of-the-art concepts within machine listening, sound engineering, workplace soundscape design, and workplace well-being AI. Pardon me. This has 2 areas. One is sound analysis concepts and sound control concepts. Then sound analysis, it was a thing called the sound analyzer and sound maps. And the other one in control is adaptive sound masking and artificial soundscapes and personalized audio via highly directional sound. Sound analyzer combines microphones with sound labeling device that feeds an AI model, which once trained can determine whether sounds in a workplace are pleasant or annoying, and it can also report and continually report these. The purpose of the analyzer is to collect data about stress and pleasure caused by sounds. This can aid decision making, and various stakeholders can understand the sort of sound space. But also the sort of manual method is a method of collecting data. The sound maps visually represent noise levels and their impacts in specific contexts. So this is just a prototype, UI prototype I made up. And in this example, you can see if you wanted to do a specific thing at a specific time, it would recommend where you could do it based on your preference profile. It's kind of like office suitability. I would say that this is an overly simplistic office to make this useful. But if you had a giant multi-story open space like you would in a lot of spaces, actually a search bar for location would make more sense, as well as yeah, it would actually be useful. And then adaptive sound masking and artificial soundscapes are ways of sort of shaping the sound around you to minimize distractions, safeguard your speech privacy, and improve the office acoustics overall. The artificial soundscape was an idea called webmic, which people wanted to relay sounds from different locations like beaches and rainforests. These things can be sort of productivity boosters or well-being restoration, and kind of just give a general nice vibe and signal time of day. Then to replay those special audio feeds to people, we inputted the sound zone technology that's actively worked on at the University of Surrey and other places, which is using methods for I'm not going to do the technical stuff, it'll take too long. Basically, you get a personalized listening experience in a public space, and it's done via a range of techniques. And yeah, we wanted to see if people thought that would be useful. The key way we did it was using this thing called scenario-based design. Rather than build this, it was too early on. And that allowed us to sort of draft these positive and negative stories about those concepts I just mentioned. And they reflect a work context, so people bring in their understanding. I don't have time to read out all of the examples, but the link is there and I can provide it to anyone if they want to read over anything. I will just highlight the core story elements though. A scenario is built up on basically claims and narrative events, and these can be designed to go both ways. You know, you can say something positively or negatively, like what was an example there? A type of sound map would be, oh, sorry, that's not a good one. Using a sound analyzer is you just have personal control would be a positive world where everything's kind of done on your thing. Whereas on a negative sense, the system notifies you, hey, you need to do some tagging, do some more stuff. And so for the same technology, you can basically design it two different ways. And yeah, so that's the way you build up these scenarios, to gather feedback from people. And the process of doing that was in focus groups, which were specifically designed. So the key part of how we did these focus groups is you have a bit where you read the stories by yourself in silence effectively, and then you answer questions on them by yourself as well before you talk to people. And then you go into group discussions and then open discussions. And this is inspired by a method, I think it's called 1, 2, 4 all, which is another participatory democracy sort of thing. And it's about you settling your own ideas and perspectives on things before entering into things. And it avoids groupthink and dominant voices just always having control. So carrying on that, how we make things nice for people, you know, nice stuff. We did a couple of them, one for Open Plan Office, one for work from home, and then did thematic analysis on the data. So this is a lot of stuff, and I might have to just skip to a couple at the end here just for time purposes. So it might seem like it's a bit of a truism saying different work environments, different needs, but I think what was brought out was that when people think about and place themselves in an office, they think socially, more socially maybe, than when you're working from home and dealing with just yourself. And you do think of your family when you're doing that, but more people were more socially stimulated in the office sense. So this really changes what type of stuff is going to be useful, what people are going to resist and think is a bit much and over the top or a bit of a privacy nightmare, for instance. And I think one thing that came up across all things was we need to make sure that the data collection is highly diverse, because if you're saying this is a public space technology and it's only tuned for a normative sort of hearing capacity. That's an instant no-no for a lot of people. Is like, this is going to potentially be bad for a lot of people, because especially neurodivergence is a very high rate in the population in general. So I'm going to skip over some of these other detailed ones and jump to these last two on privacy and trust and soundscape personalizations. So addressing privacy concerns was a really core thing. We need user consent, transparency, and think about the ethical aspects of sort of networked microphones and AI, and think about what sort of thing can we think about to design this system and then communicate it. So from other research in smart environments, there's this idea of this thing called basically transparency and invisibility when it comes to designing a trust system. Transparency being every decision that this thing makes is visible to you, you know exactly how it works. Invisible is the smooth, seamless, very product-oriented design of the modern world, where things are hidden. You terms and conditions a million miles long, you don't know what's going on. So that's a nice dimension to think about. Soundscape personalization was that there was a strong desire for personalization and customization in environments. I'll get to what that difference is in a sec. I think as people do value what we're trying to do, so that possibility driven thing, I mean, even if there's these issues, we need to keep thinking about how we can achieve this. So putting these two things together, you get a matrix, and I love a matrix. You'll see one more later. Customized to personalized. So customized, I put the example of a set of MP3 playlist of your own headphones, and you just press play when you want a thing that you do. That's highly customized. You set things out, you control when it starts, you control what's in it. On the other side, all the way up at the top corner, is a fully automated bioadaptive system with centralized control. Like, you have no control, it's operating on some level of data from a smartwatch and figuring out what you need, and you don't really know what's happening when and why. So I think this is a nice way to start unpacking some of this stuff, at least to think generatively about design. With still a lot of things missing on that. You could probably go to many more dimensions, but it's just harder to think. All right. I think what I liked about this process was that it was a good value discovery approach. It provided a pathway to get people's values on machine technology in their lives. I think it did that. Provocative narratives like utopia, dystopia, they provoke a space where you can look for things in the middle and ask why people are reflecting that way. And yeah, it still could be improved. And that's what I'm saying about revisit engagement strategy. Maybe make it less extreme, and start looking at other ways of bringing people into this sort of deliberative decision-making processes around these things. All right, I am probably needing a race. I'm really sorry. I've massively overdone the front half, so I'm probably not going to do this justice. But the thing is, this study, sound wellbeing in later life, was a sort of sponsored bit of research. We applied to EU Vitalise program to give access to a living lab infrastructure called Like a Lab, and we were trying to understand how deep listening can humanize sort of sound annotations for AI models, based on the sort of problems I highlighted earlier about lots of labeled data but not really working for what we would need to do. So I think this came down to sort of how we can collect data for indoor soundscapes and build models to understand sound context, how we can really target people's experience in soundscapes that go beyond just labeling sources and annoyance, and in the long run, how we can sorry, I missed a word there, how we can design audio AI systems that are by, with, and for older adults. So the goal of the study was, look at sounds at home, gather sort of design sensitization for everyday experience of older adults, and look at how sounds link to memory as well, and space and place. We did it in Belgium with 8 people all over 65. And what the unique opportunity of this living lab thing was, we were actually able to deploy things in people's homes and go to their houses and meet everyone and stuff. And that was really amazing. So the study had a lot of parts. We did surveys, we did a sort of kickoff workshop. Then there was this big chunk where we gave people a mobile app that would, well, I'll talk about in a sec, which prompted them to do listening exercises. And we also gave them physical materials and like booklets and cards and little fun design probe stuff. And you'll see there's a bit on the right there called co-creation sessions. So this alludes to the fact that we've not really finished this work. Both the analysis and translation stuff is still pending for a lot of the spoken audio data. So I'm not going to present a lot of the findings from it because it's a bit half-baked, if I'm honest. And so I'll probably just dive into some interesting methods that relate to the design research sensitization process. So on that case, the baseline design surveys, they're done, but they're not that interesting. Wellbeing was roughly the same. If you're really interested, at the end, I can open up a Jupyter notebook and show you. One of the things we sort of innovated in was the co-creative workshops at the onset of the project and at the end. And this was to gather people's insights and their preferences, their routines, and sort of their expectations around the study as much as anything. And one of the things we did was adapt some work on sort of sound walks from the MIT Community Innovators Lab, where usually you'd do a sound walk in a city and you'd have these questions you'd do over time, but we didn't have that opportunity in the time we had, and they're older and it would be difficult and the weather and stuff. So I built a sort of, I drafted a soundscape with a sort of guided meditation style flow, but one of them was very pleasant, one of them was a bit more aggressive. And then we got people to answer some questions along certain modes of thinking. And so it was like, describe your mental response to these soundscapes, positive, negative. Describe your emotional response. Describe your physical response. I'm quite interested in this one. And then look at the reflection on those things. And the answers are quite short. The session could be improved, but I think as a step to working with maybe less mobile audiences, this is definitely something we could improve. It was useful, but could be improved, sorry. I got a notification there. In this, one of the ending workshops, I created a method called the sound experience matrix. As you can see, I love a matrix. And this was just a way for people to sort of walk around and put some stuff on the wall about what they thought about the sounds they'd heard and how they associate them. So it's similar to the one before, but maybe more generated from after doing the study. They got to sort of think about it and pull things from their things. And one of the things is like keeping this idea that sound body relationships and the sort of somatic experience. And what we got from that was that a lot of the body responses were quite negative, whereas for myself and a lot of people who'd maybe come from a deep listening and sound art practice, maybe body sensations are a positive thing. And so I wonder if there's a pathway where these deep listening exercises you could do with people could maybe change that, and you could maybe see a change in relationships over time. That would be something I'd like to look into. We made some little AI sketches from the sounds they contributed as well. So this was a body sound, a negative one. This was a nice energy giving example where someone phones you and you get really excited and it gives you that pang of energy. And then there was an information, the sort of sound of the radio and the sounds of breakfast and sort of ordered, quiet morning. Then just general relaxing vibes. There's a pile of these. They will go up online eventually and and share them out. But another core part of this one beyond the workshops was this sort of experience sampling method that integrated a bit of deep listening practice itself. And so there's a schedule of sort of notifications people got to do exercises, which involved like getting the microphone on their phone and like recording the soundscape, just holding it like that, maybe talking into it and reflecting on what they just recorded. And this was just a way to get people through the week listening and thinking and associating things. And the scheduling was maybe a bit much for some, but other people found it very engaging and they actually were like, yeah, it was totally fine. And some people contributed more than you'd expect, others just didn't. Yeah, so adherence is very idiosyncratic, I'd say. Okay, on one of those tasks, just so you see what I mean, because I wasn't sure it would be clear, this is the sort of protocol for the sound journaling one, for instance, directly from the documents. It's yeah, it gets people to open the app, uh, find a sound that they wanted to record it, or video it if it was something that's easier to video. And so we have these options inside the app that are kind of a flow thing, and then they provide a reflection. So you do the capture reflection. That's a key part. And then we always did context questions and mood assessments, like well-being things and stuff like that. Same goes for the soundscape monitoring. That was predominantly the ISO standard things like pleasantness, annoyance, and stuff like that. But that data is still TBC. So I'm sorry to not help with that. Adjoining that was the more sort of cultural probe aspect of this, where you provide people these physical materials they can read, and like a little pamphlet and like post-it notes and all this sort of jazz of a design vibe. And yeah, it was like something physical to give people to do over the week as well. And one of those examples in that booklet would be this activity. I think I'm a bit short on time, so I'm just going to have to skip it, unfortunately. This was in yeah, just a little activity you can do. You don't have to record it or anything, you just do it, and if you can tell us about it if you want. And then we had the big part of it, which was our audio recording systems, which we're able to use audio moths, 2 audio moths in each house, to capture like 12-hour windows, basically, I think, for 7 days. And we're going to use that to look at activity day, sort of analyzing activities of daily living, and whether we need to get any more data to validate that, how useful a microphone like that would be in context, what we need to do next. And you'll see we use highly technical vibration isolation there. Yeah, and we did some field observations, which was really supported by the Leica Lab team in the Living and Care Lab. They took us around every house. They let us install the work. It was really a fantastic opportunity, and to sort of see that rather than just sending it all over. And you met everyone, and it was really nice. So there was a lot of things I thought that were useful about this study. I think it, but I'm sorry I haven't finished the data yet. So I think we can, from here, we can start to see the development of wellbeing technologies and AI sort of sonic reminiscence tools. And yeah, we can start to see people's sort of relationships of sound, place, and memory, and even a small sample like that, but for that group of people. And we gathered some co-creation ideas as well from the latter workshops. And yeah, we're going to go back and sort of look into that a bit more, and do some more co-creation. I think it's an example of a design process to do sort of AI wellbeing service stuff, where you need design sensitization alongside other sort of iterative design strategies. And yeah, it's thought-provoking for the people who actually did it. They were surprised that just listening was something that could be done differently. I think a lot of people don't have that relationship to maybe a lot of people who are already within an audio field, and giving people an opportunity to do that was a surprise for a lot. And for one woman, it was a form of pain distraction. For others, it was a way to kind of maybe like try and think about how they could be less annoyed by something, like almost like mindfulness, you know. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm probably running very short on time because of the slot. And so yeah, I think to wrap up, I think I've said this previously, was instead of treating like human subjectivities that we get like this as separate from the tools we're going to create and interact with, we should think about AI centered around people's needs, and not just machine capable outcomes that we have right now. So as we continue exploring this, our objective isn't just intelligent systems or even stopping them because of privacy. It's and the dangers they have. It's how we can look to amplify positive signals there. You know, like, do people have ways of being more empathetic to themselves or the environment? how can they feel more restored? How can they be more engaged? What part can AI have in this? And how can we make our spaces more nice to inhabit? And yeah, I think design research help us with those processes of thinking through that and how we do that by being provocative, collaborative, and stimulating ways to understand values and needs. And yeah, occasionally just peeking into the future and seeing how things feel together. So yeah, if you have any questions, that's it. Feel free. I probably won't share mic, but I know I went quite long and there was a lot in there, so I'd understand if not. But please. No snowball. Oh, I forgot one slide. Let me see if I can get this up again. Where is it? There we go. Don't be shy. Email me if you have any questions. All right. I think we're just going to wrap it up then if no one's got any. Oh, here we go. Okay. Thanks, Trevor. It's in the process of being published. So we have got one paper going to an anonymous source. I actually need to make sure I don't say that. And then the other one's going to sound and music computing on the personalization side. So what is the because of the issues with those, the privacy stuff is in one paper, the soundscape personalizations in the other paper. What you saw today was a bit of a synthesis that isn't in those papers actually as well. Sorry, it's not available yet, but I will happily forward it when it's ready. Thank you, Thomas, for this thought-provoking and balanced view on the opportunities. Lots to absorb and reflect on. Thank you, Benjamin. Like I say, yeah, please feel free to reach out if there's anything you'd like more on as well. I'm at University of Surrey. You can find me through that. What was the personalized sound like? I'm not sure I understand the question. I can offer you allowed to talk if that's all right. Are you open to that? Ah, um, in the scenarios that we suggested, the masking stuff within positive and negative environments was probably more abstract masking sounds. So it would have been like evolving sort of sound background noise for the adaptive sound masking suggested. And then for the web mic, it was much more like sounds of beaches and forests and stuff like that. Non-musical signals, but with wording that felt like music. That was the way we described that. Sorry, is that all right? No worries. I think on that part, I think the people who really wanted it the most were the work from home folk. That was one that they were the most like adoption positive, I'd say. And they were a mixture of just having a perfectly tuned productive environment and what was the other phrase? It would, I think that idea of it actually being a different place was really nice for them, because if you're working from home and you're in one context all the time with just yourself, that was kind of an appealing feature, was the fact that this was somewhere else. It was like yeah, that was one thing. Okay, so next up, Andrew. Thanks for what extent do you think animals would be successful at predicting truly personalized soundscape between visible variance and so quite high. Can't measure like Democrats, high precise. Yeah, this is what we were trying to ask, Andrew. That's a really good question. Is at what point do we boil the ocean of data, and where do we have a baseline model of prediction, for instance, for annoyance and positivity that can just be nudged based on a profile? Would be a nice sort of simple answer to that. But like, I think that it's, if you're then going to say, well, what's a sound map for the public space versus this personalized soundscape, that's where you need to have probably more emphasis on gathering diverse data. And because that's where it's about fairness of what you're representing as data for decision making. And I don't know, but I think on the prediction thing, that is one of the suggested things we put in for iterative training. So a feature of using the sound analyzer was that people didn't quite like the idea that they had to manually annotate it. They actually were like, couldn't this just be done before I get the product? And that suggests that there's both a behavioral aspect where people don't know the value they're getting from it, and so they would probably not work with it. But if they get value, maybe they'll do more. And so, or as we're sort of trying to think about now, is what's the strategy to elicit appropriate amounts of personalized information in these circumstances, and what's enough is going to be the question. And so, yeah, that's open, and but I think predictions enough to get us started. Definitely. And it's enough to get a prototype running, because you could say, right, try this one. It's based on prediction, and tell us why you like it or not. And then we get some stuff to go on from there. So for me, it's definitely the first step forward in doing more hi-fi prototyping. All right. Okay. Shang Yong Wu. Could the noise be denoise in the open space via AI tech? I'm not the I like an active noise cancelling negative signal kind of thing. I don't know how that would work. I could do a scenario on it, but I couldn't tell you whether it's possible in real life. I think that's what we were aiming at, was maybe more the adaptive sound masking is maybe it it's difficult to do the anti-noise thing without having a very fixed perspective on people's ears. Like if we had things that were right at people's ears and we had microphones and headphones that could do that, then yeah, you'd have a chance you could do some sort of quite neutralizing stuff in active noise sense. And but I think we were kind of looking at whether people wanted these big speaker arrays. One of the things we had in the previous World Cafe outputs was intelligent ear defender things, and they might be more behaviorally compatible as well. But I think on whether active denoise, that would be super cool. But I'm not sure. Yeah, you'd need, at least from my understanding of the science of it, you'd need at least some. Yeah, you'd also need to have quite detailed knowledge of how that person's Fletcher Munson curves are, because if it's trying to say, well, this person's more distracted by low mid noises when they're trying to concentrate, we're going to try and do more adaptive masking in that space. Yeah, and that's that's a whole different kettle of fish that, as a design researcher, I should stop talking. Just report what people said about the vibes. Okay, cool. Thanks for the questions, everybody. Remember, Emily's doing a talk as well in a few months, but I think that's time. So I might shut that down.